All right, hello, and welcome back to the Chase Thomas podcast, where I'm still the aforementioned Chase Thomas, coming to you live from Knoxville, Tennessee, less than 24 hours away from myself being back inside the newly renovated Neyland Stadium. Very, very much excited about that being the case, but I am not alone here on the podcast. No, fellow University of North Georgia alumni Matt Green is also here. Matt, good evening, sir. How are you?
Good evening, sir. New Neyland.
New Neyland, indeed.
Is that what they're calling it?
That's what the people are calling it. New Neyland is exactly what they're calling it. No, they added some seats, and the new video jumbotrons on both sides. The VOLS letters are up on both sides, the north and south end zone. We got we have a little chill area. I don't know what to call this, where it's like kind of like the Atlanta Hawks did this at State Farm Arena a couple years ago, I remember. But by and large, still the same. Just a little bit of some new age additions to the Coliseum.
Good stuff, man. Yeah. So for those listening today, it is there will be college football on this Thursday. But for most of us, we are 2 days away from the first true Saturday of college football. And number 2,
okay,
one of the best numbers there is in college football. I feel like that was always my favorite number. My all-time favorite college football player, not even a Georgia player, was Charles Woodson. Charles Woodson, that was just, it goes back. I had the Raiders jersey. Had the pictures of the posters on the wall.
Cover Tennessee Peyton's ears as you're doing this.
Oh yeah, man. Woodson, only defensive player to win the Heisman, but I couldn't give it to Woodson. Johnny Manziel, another great one. Derrick Henry, another great number 2. But I had to give it to the single greatest season in the history of college football, number 2, Cam Newton.
2.
And see, I go back and forth, right? Because Joe Burrow had an amazing season, right? But that LSU team had like 15 NFL players on it. Like, they were loaded. Joe Burrow was ridiculous, but they were loaded. Cam Newton just took a ragtag bunch of players. Like, I don't think one player from that offense played in the NFL. Like, it was just absurd what Cam Newton just took, like a 7-5 Auburn team, essentially a type of caliber team, and took him to a national championship.
There's one player you omitted here, which I'm surprised by, because I even think he had a better Big Ten college career than the number 2 that you mentioned there, Charles Woodson. Who do you think I'm mentioning here?
Who's had a better career?
Chase Young at Ohio State. Number 2, Chase Young. Unblockable Chase Young.
Another good one, for sure.
If you go through, people forget, because he's just been cast away to the Washington Commanders for years now, and just people have forgotten about like the experience of Chase Young. It's kind of like a bulked up version of how we talk about Will Anderson at this point, where Will Anderson is just this like unanimous best player in college football this year, and like he's just a madman. And I think Alabama's spring practice, they had to like, what did they do with him? I think they had to like,
they had to just take him out of the game because they could.
Was that what it was? I remember, it was something like that. They just literally could not play him because nothing was getting done because you just can't stop him. Like, that's Chase Young immediately, and Chase Young was unblockable at Ohio State. I mean, I remember watching the video clips of Chase Young, and I remember the Michigan game specifically. He's just an absolute madman and was 1,000% unblockable and one of the best defensive ends and just pass rushers we've ever seen in college football.
Yeah, he's every bit as good. It was every bit as good as Will Anderson. I think he's one of the best defensive players of the last decade or so. Like
I would say the last 20 plus years, man.
He's definitely up there. He was a monster.
Another one who I guess we could throw in there, J.K. Dobbins. No, I'm just kidding. Matt Corral.
Who's the best number 2 Tennessee's had you can think of?
It's not Jabari Small, current number 2. Let's see. Best number 2s at UT. Montario Hardesty was a good number 2.
That was the one that jumped out of my head. That was the first one I thought of.
Not a lot of QB number 2s. I'm trying to think. There aren't a lot of
Your
22s.
boy Garantano, he was number 2, right?
Yeah, that's again, as I said, who was cut unfortunately by the Arizona Cardinals this week. Did not make the Cardinals team.
It's unfortunate.
Yeah. Jared Garantano. No, that experience. Gosh, you know what's crazy, man? That was a little over a year ago. I mean, 2 years ago now. And it just doesn't feel like it. It feels like a lifetime ago. Like the Jeremy Pruitt, Jared Garantano, Jim Chaney experience feels like a lifetime ago. And it really wasn't. It was it was a year and a half was the last time we saw that group together. And it's amazing how quickly things can change for a college football program.
Yeah, without a doubt. That the Jeremy Pruitt, the short-lived era that was.
Who's the best Georgia number 2?
Off the top of my head, like maybe Brandon Boykin. He was a good one. Demario Minter. Like there hasn't been a lot of Tim Wansley, Buford guy was number 2. But yeah, there hasn't been a lot that I can think of. A lot of corners. But Kendall Milton,
Asher Allen.
I said what I said. I'll put all those. I'll put all those guys.
Did I make that person up? Is that real? Is he real?
Yeah, because Asher Allen, he's not a popular Georgia player. He's one of these that left early for the draft. I think he had 0 interceptions and left early for the draft. It was like a 5th round pick. It's just like, what are you doing, man? Who do you think you are leaving early? So, but yeah, I think he was like 07, 08 starter around then. But yeah. Those are the best number 2s I can think of.
I feel like the meme of all men want to do is sit around naming old sports guys. Like that's what men do.
It's so true. Oh, Richard LeCount too. Richard LeCount was very good number 2. I forgot about him.
What do I do at this point in my life though, Matt, where I'm 31 and Asher Allen is just right there just to pull it? Like you couldn't like just what am I doing with this information, folks? My brain is cooked. Like the stuff that I retained over the years, like not even a Georgia fan. I'm just like Asher Allen. Like why is that there? I like part of me is like, did I make that up? It's like, oh my God, the amount of just storage in my brain to just useless sport. I guess it's not useless because I'm using it for the job.
Hey, here you go. Yeah. Tucker High School.
Is he a Tucker High School guy?
He was. Okay. And that's why I know like half of the geography that I know in the state of Georgia is just, Montezuma. Yeah, I've heard of that.
Well,
Roquan
what is
Smith, by the way?
There you go. What's the mood tracker in Dacula? 0-2 Falcons. Little uneasiness.
Is that right?
They are 0-2.
Do you know who they played?
I do not. I just know they're 0-2.
Yeah, they're the town. It's just I feel like the whole town's just hanging their heads right now. We need to get back in the win column.
Yeah. Have you circled the date of which game you're taking? The woman, the full ride heiress.
I have not. Maybe I think they play Buford this year. Maybe Lanier.
Okay.
One of the two. I'm not sure. We'll see. We'll see what's up.
How does Buford work? Because the 2 gold solid helmets, like that's going to be a little confusing when those 2 match up. Not a lot going on with the helmets.
That's true. These are the things you got to worry about.
100%. 100%. Well, don't forget, folks, you can check out this podcast on youtube.com/ChaseThomasPodcast. Like and subscribe and check us out on that front. All kinds of great video content there, full episodes, all that good stuff on the YouTube page. You can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. This is a daily national sports podcast here on the Blue Wire Pod Network. Cover everything, even college football, all the time, like we do with fellow University of North Georgia alumni Matt Green. So make sure if you love this very podcast, you take a second and leave this show a 5-star rating and a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, if that is indeed how you listen to this very program each and every day. Matt, where do you want to start? Where do you want to start in the Nighthawk News Hour? Shout out to our old friend Nigel, the Nighthawk. Where do you want to go before we get into our week 1 preview?
Well, first I want to let the listeners know that Dacula plays South Gwinnett this weekend, and then they're actually at the Tucker Tigers next week. So
there you go.
Bringing it full circle. But first thing from Nigel, I think is these all. I gotta get my grinds my gears segment real quick. Like, does college football, have they not learned anything from like the NFL, like dominating the news cycle? Like, we finally got football back, and now we're hearing all these playoff talks, new rules, transfers, Big 12, TV rights, all this stuff going on. Like, get that stuff out of the way in June, in April. Like, that's how you stay relevant when the games aren't happening. Now, no one cares about that stuff going on. Like, we just want to talk about the games, but with what is happening, I feel like we do have to address it. The NCAA board of directors given their new transfer rules that we will have like 2 transfer portals, one right after the season, like a month and a half period after the season, and then like a 2-week period. It looks like maybe after the semester ends, I guess is that date, like in May. So after spring practice. So maybe that'll get the transfer. And also the other part is that there's not unlimited transfers like without sitting out, which I think is something that most college fans want. Like, you know, you want to be pro player and the coaches can jump, you know, team to team every year if they want. It's just a little different with the players, you know, like the one-time transfer rule is good, but I think it would be a little ridiculous with this portal and stuff if they can just, you know, just go somewhere every single year without sitting out. So I think that's good news. I feel like for the people who are worried about just all the changes happening at once in college football.
I wonder if it was just like the pushback from the big time coaches, the Kirbys and the Nicks and the Josh Heupels, of course, pushing back on just the unlimited transfer rule. Where, I mean, maybe that still comes once this gets acclimated, once they get used to the windows. Do we know when the windows are officially going into play? Is it the conclusion of this season?
Yeah, I think they said the 2022-2023 calendar. So I guess that would mean December of 2022. So yeah, I guess after this this season is when that initial 45-day transfer window will happen.
And that makes it so curious because we've already seen how this is played out with high school recruiting, right? Where this fall, most people like commit now in June, July. Most of the kids are committing in the summer and then they're signing in December. Like the early signing period is now just this de facto signing period. And there's really not much left on National Signing Day in February. I wonder how much gets done, and like the craziness of December for these college programs is going to be insane. And I feel bad for these kids because, I mean, what happens to these high school kids is going to be dictated by the flurry of moves by these transfer portal kids first, because I think a lot of these big time programs are going to wait and see who pops up in the portal and have their plan of action to attack the portal they want to attack. And if they get more kids in the portal than they had anticipated, and they're going to have to like make some tough choices about how many high school kids they're going to take. So, I mean, the forgotten part of what's going on with the portal and just the way the portal is working right now is high school kids getting screwed. A lot of high school kids are getting left behind and are not getting the same kind of offers or opportunities that they were getting before just open season with the portal. And I think that I don't know. I wonder if that has factored into any of these discussions whatsoever.
Yeah, and that's a good point. I think and so it says the 45-day period starts the day after the championship selections are made. So I'm thinking that's the day the college football playoff is announced. So if you just look at that this year, that's going to be, you know, that Saturday is the 3rd, that Sunday is the 4th. So December 5th is when that portal or transfer, what am I trying to say? Transfer window opens. Thank you. On the 5th, and then early signing day is December 15th. So there is like a 10-day period there where some teams could, you know, make their transfer decisions right then and there. And at least some high schoolers, there's been some movement that the high schoolers kind of know what the current roster may look like, you know, at least some of the big time transfers. Because that's what I thought was interesting too, the May window being just 2 weeks. I feel like that makes it seem like we don't want this to be a big recruiting window that you're going around, let teams wine and dine you and figure out where you want to go. Like, this is a 2-week thing. Like, okay, you want to leave, you need to know where you want to go. And it's a very short window like that. I like that aspect of it.
That tells me tampering is going to get ramped up, where they're going to be done deals before they enter the portal for those 2 weeks.
Probably true. Like NFL free agency,
Mm-hmm.
those midnight deals that get signed.
Mm-hmm. I think that's what we're going to see a little bit there. But it's also just like protecting. I mean, I was talking to On3's Ivan Maisel about this earlier, of just like, you got to protect these coaches. I mean, there's a reason that Billy Napier has more head coaches more assistant coaches than football players this year. And it's because they are trying to delegate and hire as many staffers as humanly possible to keep their sanity. And I think one of the easiest ways you keep their sanity is fixing the portal and fixing the windows. And these are just basic fixes. And it's just amazing to me that they are doing this now. Like, what was stopping them from producing these rules from the outset? Like, that's what I don't understand. This was pretty easy. Why would you not announce the portal and announce these additions and not bring this part of it with it? And I think we could have made this a lot easier for a lot of universities and a lot of programs and these kids if these rules had been in effect from the get-go.
Without a doubt. And I think the last thing they need to do is get back to one signing day. I think the February signing day was fine. Like, guys could still enroll early and sign and, we're enroll in that spring semester, but when the February signing day existed. So it seems like everything is just rushed so much in that December time. And especially if you're adding a 45-day window, like, that window will be, if it's December 5th, that will be closed by the first Wednesday in February. Like, that would do a lot for just the chaos that is the college football offseason and transfer portal.
Yeah. Well, we shall see. These are positives. These are positive developments, because there's another big development, because like you said, college football loves nothing more than just being the beautiful mess that it's always been, where week one, and it's driving front of the pod, Late Kicks, Josh Pate, insane all day today, that this is where the conversation has reverted back to, not the actual games, not the actual on the field product. It's more off the field changes and madness in the sport.
Yeah, didn't
And
they announce Oklahoma, Texas? Like, was that the one they announced the week of, like, the national championship? There was one of the realignment things I think they brought up, like, the week of the national championship this past year, and it's like, we gotta do better. We gotta do better about this news cycle.
yes, we do. But I don't remember who that was. Texas, Oklahoma sounds right, but I'm not 1000% certain on that. Well, from Ross Dellinger of Sports Illustrated, he said, quote, CFP presidents on Friday are expected to determine the next evolution of the playoff, with a potential vote to expand in 2026, and if unanimous, as early as 2024, sources tell SI Now. So does that mean that 2024, like, that would be next year, right? Because the title game is in January of 2024 for next season, or is that saying 2 years out? I'm not
always, yeah, it's always, I always get confused on which year you're really talking. If you're talking 2024, I would think you're saying the 2024 season.
okay.
But who knows really.
It's amazing that this came up now, and it's almost like with both of these happening at the same time, it's these weird too little too late things, where it's just so much damage has been done, and we might not have some of the realignment madness if we don't have this the voters, I mean the folks that were involved in the last round of talks, who decline to push to 12, and then of course USC and UCLA go to the Big Ten, and the alliance is dead, and all this stuff. Like, does this all happen if you just vote to expand the playoff? Maybe, probably, but it may have been delayed a little bit longer. It may have made it more feasible to keep this current model for a little bit longer. But I am curious. Why? I guess there are rights deals, and there is more mitigating circumstances that we're not privy to as to why they can't just do this next year and may have to wait. I'm sure there's TV rights stuff and all kinds of other contributing factors as to why this cannot be an immediate thing. But 12, I mean, I think you and I discussed this a few weeks back where I was like, if they're doing it, they're not going to 8, because I think you were saying 8. And I was like, if they're going to expand, they're going to go bigger and bigger. And 12, I mean, I still think we end up at 16. I think that's the final number once realignment's done and they get to the 16 model. But 12 with some buys and home field advantage for that first round. You open it up to a lot of the other conferences. That's cool. If my choice, and look, I want the BCS back. I was very pro BCS, bring it back. Like that's 100% my identity here as a college football fan. But
No.
I know it's not for you, Matt. But if my choice is between the 4-team playoff and the just absolute crap we've seen in the semifinal games, or the 12-teamer, we get some home playoff games at universities, sign me up. That is a much better option than our current model. So I think that is where I'm at, where just take the wins when you can. And I think this is a victory as a college football fan where it's like, this is going to be really cool to see, like, Michigan in the big house hosting a playoff game against, like, I don't know, a group of 5 Boise who's undefeated or something, or even just like a number 3 or number 4 team in the SEC fighting for their playoff lives. Like, I think that is just going to be an electric, awesome atmosphere if that's ultimately what happens here, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's the only way that I feel like I'm interested in it, because the 12 is the max I wanted to go, because there's something cool about 12, because you do still have, it's a big deal to be one of those top 4 seeds and get the first round bye, right? So that's still, I feel like that preserves an element of the regular season being really important, and being as close to perfection as possible, like what college football has always been. And then the other part of, yeah, like you said, like some college football, some playoff games on home campuses, like that would just be incredible. I think it's unrealistic with all the neutral sited travel that teams are already doing in the regular season, and then traveling for every postseason game. Like, I think to some extent the fans, need to be thought of more. And, the idea of Georgia hosting a playoff game versus Notre Dame or something, like, you saw how electric that atmosphere was for a regular season game, like a college football playoff game would just be incredible. And I think that also, to go along with the top 4 seeds argument, like the college football regular season is it's just so much more special than every other sport. And getting a home playoff game as your reward for a perfect undefeated regular season, or a 1-loss regular season, I think that still is a good incentive. I'm not crazy about going to 12, but we'll see what the vote comes out to.
I'm excited. I think this will be a positive, and it seems like this is a formality that they're going to vote on, based on Ross's reporting, that this is going to be what ultimately happens here.
Gonna happen.
There you go. Matt Green, week 0. We had college football over the weekend. The only game I watched in its entirety, I will confess, was Northwestern and Nebraska, which was oof.
How did you watch it to entirety? I was unable to watch it to entirety because instead Fox changed to the Falcons Jaguars preseason game halfway through the third quarter.
Well,
Did
I'm
you
not in
see
that
this?
market.
Have you seen this? Have you heard about this?
No, but I'm also not in that market
Oh man, if Fox
anymore.
wants to be the king of college football, want to get in on the playoff and all this, you're changing to preseason NFL games? Oh man, I was outraged.
Well, I'll also tell you, Matt Green, I don't want to out my source here, because they're very clutch in the regular season when if I don't get a particular game, but I want to be able to watch it back. There are certain YouTube content creators that may or may not have you covered on that front, Matt Green. If your game is taken away briefly, that there are alternatives to get where you need to go and catch up on what you missed.
No, it happened to multiple people. So I saw on Twitter, you could download the Fox Sports app and watch it on your phone. But I still had to blast Fox for such a egregious programming error.
Well, it's a good thing that I'm not currently signed to Fox with this podcast, Matt Greener. We have to edit all of that out because very direct shot at Fox Sports and Fox, which is a great broadcast. And by the way, our favorite broadcast on this very program, Joel Clatton, Gus Johnson, the Big Nooner on Fox is the best college football broadcast team and broadcast product there is.
It's debatable. I don't know.
Who are you putting above them right now?
I'm taking an SEC matchup over. I don't care about the announcers.
No, hold on. You got to remove that.
I'm taking Todd Blackledge and Sean McDonough calling an SEC game any day of the week.
Sean McDonough is also, you could make the case Sean McDonough is the most underrated play-by-play guy. He got a lot of crap when he was doing Monday Night Football. He was fantastic. I don't understand.
Yeah, he's done everything too.
He's multi-talented. He can call any sport. I don't know. I'm a very pro Sean McDonough.
He called the Sid Bream 92 Braves. He was his voice cracked. Like that's him making the call. He is safe. Like, and his voice cracks when he gets it's kind of iconic. Oh, it's definitely iconic in Braves history. But yeah, I'm taking Todd Blackledge is solid too. I think that's who actually is doing the Oregon Georgia game this weekend. But yeah, I'll take that an SEC game over Gus Johnson calling the Big Ten. That's Gus Johnson's great. Joel Klatt, they're great, but give me Blackledge and McDonough.
Interesting. Okay. I mean, I'm not going to fight you on it. Who was Blackledge's old partner? Something Patrick. What was his name? Was it Mike Patrick? What was his name?
Mike Patrick. Yeah. That was the old school ESPN.
Did he just retire? He disappeared. He was
very old. Yeah. I think he's a pretty old guy.
Okay. Matt Green, there were a couple games we can run through outside of Nebraska and that one. Vanderbilt 63-10. Mike Wright going off in the third quarter.
Looking like RG3 over here.
Woo! The Doors.
I was getting RG3 vibes. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not saying he's gonna win the Heisman or anything, but it's the best thing Vanderbilt's had going for a while.
Hey, I mean, it's a positive based on how many touchdowns that team scored last year. I mean, I ran through in our SEC preview just how anemic that offense was. So maybe there's room for optimism. UConn goes to Utah State and they lose on the road at Utah State 31-20. Illinois takes care of Wyoming 38-6. Northwestern defeats Nebraska 31-28. Florida State beats Duquesne 47-7. Matt Green, without looking at the sheet or going back to the episode from last week, my spider senses are telling me I'm still batting 1,000 on this college football season, sir. 3-0, and I seem to recall
a perfect 3-0 overall and 3-0 against the spread. I was 3-0 against the spread, but I thought the Huskers would win the game, so I was 2-1 overall. But yeah, man, I just Northwestern doesn't suck, but oh man, if you're Scott Frost in Nebraska, like just they traveled well for that game. That's just gotta be very disheartening. I just don't know where Nebraska goes from here. Like I don't know how many games does it take to save Scott Frost's job? Like I don't necessarily see it happening.
What was your thought when he was up 2 scores and did the onside kick? What was your first thought?
Yeah, it's just probably what everyone it was just like onside kick, like a bold strategy, like that's, I don't know what my first thought was, because you just like, I feel like you do an onside kick to kind of seize the momentum in the game, like, oh, they don't see it coming. We need to take a possession away from them because they're off. We can't really stop their offense. Something like that. Like you had control of the game and you just decided to give them a 45-yard field. Like I did not understand that at all. And it's like, that's going to be the moment, right? That was the beginning of the end for Scott Frost. That's the player throwing the shoe of Scott Frost's tenure at Nebraska. It feels like.
It's rough, man. I don't see how he gets out of this. I think if you're a Husker fan, I mean, you're just looking at this like, how many more years are we doing this? Like, this is ridiculous. I mean, the one score, I was talking to Brendan Vogel of Hail Varsity, managing editor over there, very good Nebraska publication. He went to Dublin for the game. And just he told me on the pod, he was like, I looked over to my media member colleague and we just both shook our heads at that moment. And it was something that Husker fans, I could not imagine being a fan of a team that has lost that many one score games over one coach's tenure. That would drive me up the freaking wall. So God bless Corn Nation over there, because I don't think you and I could put up with some insanity like that. That level of unlucky and just, I think we can now say coaching ineptitude to do stuff like that. There is now a pattern of like when Scott Frost says after the game that like, well, we were up and we were looking to step on their neck and we were trying, it's like, oh, this is, and Brandon put it really well, where it's like, this is just who Scott Frost is. Like, that's his coaching style, is he is thinking that way and he's just programmed that way. And you're like, well, that's not working. And at a certain point, you just have to say, this style does not work for us. And as much of a legend as you are in Cornhusker territory, we got to move on, man. Like, it just, I am still amazed at how poorly and how awry the Scott Frost tenure has gone, because there was so much optimism, Matt Green. Like, hindsight's 2020, but like when he goes undefeated at UCF and Florida's fighting for him, Oregon wants him, like he was the premier coaching candidate around college football at that time. And the man goes to Nebraska. He goes home. He chooses his home school. Like, he could have been at Florida. Who knows what Florida looks like right now? He could have gone to Oregon. What does Oregon look like? And all these what ifs. And he went home, and it's not a Kirby Smart story, man. It is a rough ending for him.
No, and I saw it brought up again this weekend. Our good old buddy Bo Pelini's record brought up, and 8 years as the Nebraska head coach. Actually, hold on. Yeah, 7 years, because they're counting the year he only coached one game. 7 years as the Nebraska head coach, never won less than 9 games. Do you know what Scott Frost's record is right now in Nebraska? This being start of year 5.
I don't know his record off the top of my head, but I would guess he's like, what, 12, 14 games under 500?
15-30.
Yeah.
Whew. I said who was my prediction? Mike Norvell was my prediction for the first Power 5 coach to get fired this season. After one game, I would probably already change that prediction. Like, Scott Frost seems like a dead man walking. Don't want to call for anybody's job, but that's a rough way to start it. Because it's one thing to lose these close games. You're just like, oh, we're right there. A bounce here, bounce there, we're right there. It's another thing if it's coaching decisions, like just blatant coaching decisions that are costing the game. Like, that's another story.
Yeah, I think we'll see what Florida State looks like. This is one of the other pitfalls of being by yourself on national television, where Florida State gets LSU in the Superdome with no competition, where all eyes are going to be like all eyes on some ACC hot seat stuff this weekend and early next week is going to be rough for certain coaches, because Jeff Collins gets Clemson all by his lonesome on Monday night, where everyone gets to watch. So if he's embarrassed, I feel like it amplifies the situation when you're just the trending topic on Twitter, because everybody is watching that particular game and everybody will be watching Tech Clemson and everybody's going to be watching Florida State LSU. So how Norvell and his team and Jeff Collins and his team perform in those two games over the weekend and early in next week, I think it's going to be extremely fascinating. But my conspiracy theory, or not even a conspiracy theory, is my gut is telling me that Dion and Travis Hunter are eventually going to find their way back to Tallahassee, and it's going to be a package deal.
Wow.
I think that's going to happen. I think there's going to be a push where they're just going to be like, all right, screw it. Like, we just got to bring Dion back. Nothing else is working here. We're bringing in Dion and we're adding all this excitement, and he'll recruit his tail off and all this kind of stuff. But I do think, I think I sent you the message board geniuses about Nebraska's head coaching search that hasn't even gotten started yet. But Nebraska fans, Matt Rule, Urban Meyer, who you were
They're
already talking to.
ambitious for sure. I saw Urban Meyer and I texted you. I was like, that might just be crazy enough to work, honestly. Like Urban Meyer is going to resurface somewhere. Although I just saw someone talking, I think it was Dan Patrick, talking about Urban Meyer going to Arizona State. So Urban Meyer is going to come. Somebody's gonna get Urban Meyer. It's not gonna be one of the maybe blue blood programs. We joked, I think, last year about South Carolina that he's gonna be like go the old Steve Spurrier route, end up at South Carolina. So we'll see. Urban Meyer's not done coaching in college football, I don't think yet. So maybe Nebraska might just be crazy enough to work.
I could see Matt Rule more than Urban in Arizona State would be interesting.
Is Matt Rule getting fired? Are they already not liking him in the NFL?
Yeah, no, Matt Rule's on. This is it. Like Matt Rule, I think has the highest first coach fired odds in the NFL right now.
Not for long.
No, but I mean, he's a great college coach. Like you bring him into a lot of these college programs, I think a lot of programs would be more than happy to bring in Matt Rule. Matt Green, Jim Harbaugh went biblical this week in naming Cade McNamara and JJ McCarthy co-starters for week 1 and week 2. This is why we need the portal windows, because coaches have absolutely lost their minds. Where you listen to Dabo talk about DJ and Cade and just the weirdness in that in those answers of who's going to play, and he's like, "Yeah, you're going to see Cade at some point this year," and it's like, okay, anyone who is dang sure about their quarterback is not saying you're going to see the backup phenom at any point during the year. Like, why would you say that? And then you have.
I'm so solid on our quarterback that he's not going to start week 2.
I mean, Cade's also a captain, I think, for Michigan. So that's kind of weird. Never heard of a captain being a co-starter with JJ, but I'm certain this has to do with making sure that JJ stays in this program for at least another year. I don't know, man. What are your thoughts on Jim Harbaugh citing biblical reasons as to why Cade and JJ will be alternating starts out of the gate for the Wolverines?
My first thought is this is why we need to get rid of these cupcake games. Like these games don't matter. We're just starting a different quarterback game 2. Like, so that's my first thought. These first 2 games, like, who cares? Like Michigan's schedule is honestly, it's very manageable this year. Like I was looking at it, it's not too tough. And obviously there's multiple good teams in the Big Ten East, but and then my next thought is that I think this is a legitimate, opportunity for JJ McCarthy to like show what he's got. And I think, the whole definition of insanity, I think if Cade McNamara is the starter once again, I think you kind of know what this team's ceiling is personally. Whereas JJ McCarthy, the floor could potentially be lower, but we don't know what the ceiling is with a guy who was a highly touted prospect, athletic, dual threat guy coming out of high school.
I think these coaches are absolutely terrified, right? Like they are terrified of moving away from these guys they love. Like, Jim Harbaugh loves him some Cade McNamara. Like, he's like, dude's gritty, grinder. He works really hard. He's got all the mental tools that you want in a quarterback. He doesn't turn the ball over. He's safe. Like, dude just has it. And then you're like, there's part of me. It's like the angel and the devil on both shoulders. And the other side, he's like, JJ's a 5-star. I don't know if he might be Shea Patterson. And that's the concern where you're like, he could be Trevor Lawrence or he could be Shea Patterson. And you have no idea
which I don't think he could be Trevor Lawrence.
I mean, he's a phenomenal prospect. Like or Justin Fields, whatever. Like you can, there are guys.
That's high. We're talking the guys are like number 1 player in the country. I mean, he was
What was
good.
JJ in his class?
Not number 1, number 2 overall.
He was high. What was JJ? Now I'm curious.
I would have said he's 25th ranked player in the country, but I don't know exactly. But he's
a 98 composite. He was number 5, the number 5 quarterback in his class. 5-star.
Those are some of the like most highly touted prospects ever coming out of high school. That's all I'm saying. Like he could definitely be a really good player, but like he could be, Bo Nix, or he could be a better version of Bo Nix, right? Like I don't know who the who I'm trying to say on the alternative, but I think it's worth rolling the dice and just giving him, some legit reps where he's not worried about coming out of the game, that sort of thing, if he makes a mistake. So I think I don't take it as him being afraid of the transfer portal. I take it as Cade McNamara is like a veteran and everything, but we really need to see what the other guys got and see if he can take this offense to another level.
Yeah, because Cade can't beat Georgia. He can't beat Bama. He can't beat. I mean, but what's funny is he beat Ohio State, and maybe that. I don't know. It's so fascinating. So I'm curious to see how that quarterback competition. I think we see both a lot. But my thing too is like if I was a head coach, the way I would look at it is, I would say the safe pick, like the Cade type, if you have to pick between the two, you never start them because it's like a Stetson Bennett too, where it's like, oh, we're battling, but like we're gonna name JT the starter, and if circumstances change that, Stetson's gonna be ready. Cade's gonna be ready. Like they know they're not NFL quarterbacks. They know that this is it for them. This is their prime time. Like this is what they live for. So it's like they're gonna stay locked in. But
Feels
if you go
Jacob Eason and Grayson Lambert type of deal.
Right. And I think that's how I would treat all of these, where it's like if it goes awry with the 5-star unknown, well, that sucks, but you still know the guy behind him, the safe one, is going to be okay, and he's going to stabilize stuff. He will not take it personally or take it. He will not just self-destruct by not being named the starter in September. Is where I would go with that. So I'd always lean on just name the 5-star question mark, because those are the guys who now win titles. And I think it's just by and large, it's so difficult to run the gauntlet at these big time programs without an elite quarterback that you have to try it out. And if it doesn't work, then you go with plan B. But I would just start JJ and see what happens.
And if McCarthy has a Stetson Bennett UAB type of performance where he throws 5 touchdowns in 2 quarters or something, they also play UConn the next week. So it's like, split the snaps 50-50 before you get into 9 straight games of conference play.
Absolutely. Well, that's all I've got from Nigel and Nighthawk. Shout out to our old friend Nigel on the front there. Do you have anything you want to add before we get into our week 1 preview, Matt Green?
No, man. Let's get into it.
All right, Matt Green. Just to remind folks, I am 3-0 on the season, both against the spread and just outright picks. Matt Green trailing out of the gate here. He has never, I don't think you've trailed in any of our pick'em over what year is this of us doing this now? Is this year 3?
This is year 3. I don't have the data from year 2, but I do have the data from year 1. I do have the data from 2021, which, not to toot my own horn, but I was winning the listeners some money last year.
Mm-hmm.
What is 84 plus 60? 84 divided by 151. I was at a 55% against the spread last year, so I'm winning the people money. So you were not so much, but
I was around 500 though, right?
You were 70 and 81 against the spread. So, just under 500, but
I'm losing you some money, but not a lot.
And then we had exactly. Maybe lost you some as well. And then we had Zeus. He was 6-6 last season with his home dog of the week. So we'll see if Zeus can do better this year. But let's start this thing off. We got 2 excellent Thursday night games to kick off the college football season, not including, of course, Tennessee and was Ball State.
Yes, Ball State, the Cardinals, who tweeted out an image hyping up the Ball State Tennessee game tomorrow night. Y'all are hearing this on game day. They spelled Tennessee wrong and did not use an image of Tennessee in the background. So or Knoxville in the background. So just bad job all around by the Ball State Cardinals.
Just disrespecting already.
Yes.
So we got the backyard brawl kicking us off at 7:00. Renewing this rivalry, West Virginia at Pittsburgh. Pitt is a 7-point favorite at home. I think I'm liking Graham Harrell and JT Daniels in this new look West Virginia offense. I'm not sure about Pittsburgh. The one thing I would worry most about as West Virginia is this Pittsburgh defensive line. I think could be one of the best defensive lines in the ACC, maybe one of the better ones in the country. And JT Daniels is a guy that we know has struggled to stay healthy. So if West Virginia is not able to protect JT Daniels, I think it's going to be a long night for them. But I just don't expect them to be as explosive offensively this year. I know they have Keaton Slovis, but I'm going to take West Virginia to win this one outright on the road.
You're joining friend of the pod, Josh Pate. I saw he made that pick today as well. Here's what I'm hoping. You're both wrong, Matt, because if you're right, I am even more concerned about the Pitt game in week 2 because Pitt starting off 0-2 just seems unlikely, and they'll be pretty ticked off if they lose the backyard brawl to open.
I mean, this isn't Clemson or anything. This isn't Oklahoma starting 0-1. Like I think Pittsburgh going 0-2 isn't without what am I trying to say? Outside the realm of possibility.
Yeah, I look at this. What's interesting too, I mean, outside of the battle of the USC quarterbacks, right? Keaton Slovis versus JT Daniels. New coordinators, like Neil Brown is not a Graham Harrell type coach. I think it's a weird marriage here. And we'll see how it works. I'm sure JT is very comfortable playing in Harrell's scheme, and I think it should be fine. But it's very different than what Neil Brown and company have been running in Morgantown to this point. And I'm not sure it's going to be a seamless transition. And there might be a little bit of a pushback where, I mean, look at Pat Narduzzi. He was like, we're passing too much. We're scoring too many points. We're winning too many games. Get Mark Whipple out of here. Bring in King Caminiti, or that's a baseball player. What's his name? Frank Signetti Jr. And
Caminiti.
And I don't know. Like Pitt, the reason that you would take West Virginia is because you're betting on West Virginia's offense kind of doing what Pitt's offense did last year, right? With Kenny Pickett, where you're like, JT Daniels is a first round type quarterback talent, goes into Morgantown. Neil Brown's going to have that defense coached up. They should be good, defensive minded coach. And if he just hands over the keys to Graham Harrell, this should be a really fun West Virginia offense that we grew up watching. A different variation from Pat White to JT Daniels, but fun nonetheless. Geno Smith was a pocket
maybe a little more Will Greer than Pat White for JT Daniels.
Maybe. And I'm not sure about the marriage. I'm not sure if I'm drinking the Renaissance in Morgantown with Graham Harrell and Neil Brown. I don't think this marriage, and JT, I got to see it, man. Like, I got to see him get through a game. I got to see him win a big college football game again. I am not there. I think Pitt is a better team. There's a reason they're 17th in the AP poll. I get that this line's not huge. Pitt's just a better team. This defensive line's going to hit JT. I think JT is going to get battered in this one. And I am not certain that West Virginia is going to be able to match up with Pitt for 4 quarters. And I think there's going to be an adjustment with this offense and with what Neil Brown's trying to do. And I think Pat Narduzzi is going to be more comfortable. Obviously been there a lot longer. They have better players, better talent. And Signetti's had a lot of success with Phil Jurkovec at Boston College. Comes over there. I think he'll be fine with Keaton Slovis. I think they'll be more balanced at the very least. But I'm pretty high on Pitt this year, so I'm going to take them to win and cover. I'm not buying the West Virginia stuff yet. You got to show me more weeks than that, because I think Neil Brown's getting fired at some point this year.
All right. In our other Thursday night game, we need to sound the alarm, sir, because you know what's going on. You know what time it is. Penn State at Purdue. Purdue, 3.5-point home dog of the week right here. I think Aiden O'Connell and this Purdue offense, this is going to be a really interesting matchup. I think this Purdue passing offense should be one of the better ones in the Big Ten this year, but Penn State's secondary might be the best secondary in the Big Ten. So I think this will be strength versus strength, but the home atmosphere, you know how I feel about a weekday college football game. Like, it's hard to go on the road on the weekday, and I just think this atmosphere is going to be electric. I don't know if this is going to be 2018 Ohio State electric for Purdue. That was some magic they had going on. But I think I like Purdue in this one. I don't know. I don't think they're a better team necessarily than Penn State. This feels a lot like Minnesota, Ohio State to open the year last year. Like this is the best shot that they're going to have, and this might be the toughest game on Purdue's entire schedule that they're getting here week one. And I think they're going to upset Penn State.
Oh, you have them winning outright.
Oh yeah.
Oh man, your home dog of the week, your home victor of the week, Matt Green.
Yes, sir.
They opened last year with a 30-21 win over Oregon State. They started off well last year too. I mean, they were right there with Minnesota in one of their losses. They were right there with Notre Dame on the road, lose by 2 scores. They beat Illinois, blowout UConn, beat Iowa, as you alluded to. But then, I mean, they get blown out by Wisconsin at home, get blown out by Ohio State, beat Michigan State at home, big one there. I just look at this Penn State team, and this is another difference. We're going to disagree. 2 out of the gate here, my friend. 2 out of the gate. The 3.5 for the Nittany Lions. Matt Green, give me the Nittany Lions to win here, cover. It's silly now, the way we're talking about the Nittany Lions, where people are just all in on Purdue. Are they a sleeper? What can Purdue do this year? Are they a college football playoff sleeper? Aiden O'Connell, he passed all over the third stringers at Tennessee. Did they win that game? People are saying no. People are saying yes. It depends on who you ask. Some might say that Jalen Wright was in and crossed the white line at the pylon, but that is neither here nor there. Here is the deal. Penn State started 5-0 last year. They got their quarterback knocked out in the Iowa game on the road. Back up, just deer in headlights, goes awry. They still only lose by 3. Penn State obviously just completely unravels after that. The team we saw before Sean Clifford got hurt last year was closer to who they actually are as a program and who they are as a team than what we saw down the stretch. We've gone so far the other way where it's like, oh, I think Purdue's just going to beat them straight up. And then I think at Auburn, they're going to lose at Auburn. They're going to do both. Penn State has too many players. Penn State, they have the same OC. That's good to have Mike Yursich back on that front. They were able to keep Anthony Poindexter as their DC, losing Brent Pry to Virginia Tech. They almost lost Poindexter to his alma mater at UVA. They go Tony Elliott instead. He's still there. Like you said, one of the best secondaries in the Big Ten and just in the conference as a whole. This is a good matchup for Penn State to me. I think they're going to give Aiden O'Connell problems. I think people are going to be surprised at Penn State just being like, this is bulletin board material. Like James Franklin's showing them all week. They had the Boilermakers beating you outright week 1 and on their way to 6-0, 5-0 because Purdue's schedule after this very manageable where they could be like undefeated. I forgot which week it looks like, but they can get up to 6-0 if they win this one. I just am not buying it. Penn State's not allowing any of this to happen. Too good of a program. They're healthy. Sean Clifford, year 37 in Happy Valley. Give me the Nittany Lions to win and cover.
And don't get it twisted. It's not an indictment on Penn State. Like Purdue went 9-4 last year. Like they're a dark horse, like to potentially win the Big Ten West, I think, this year. So they're a respectable team. I think Penn State can still win, 9-10 games and just get, tripped up going into a hostile environment to open up the season.
I'm curious about the run game. They have some big freshmen in Katron Allen and Nick Singleton, especially, that I wonder if they're able to control the ball and to kind of keep the ball out of Aiden O'Connell's hands and to be able to pass all over them and get in a shootout. Because if this shootout, I think Penn State loses. But if this is a low scoring affair, I think Penn State will have this one comfortably in the bag.
It should be a good one. I guess is this Gus Johnson? We got Gus Johnson and Joel Klatt for this one.
Do they do Thursday nights?
They got to do it, right? I think they did the Minnesota Ohio State. Yeah, they definitely did Minnesota Ohio State last year. So I would think
this stinks though. I have to pick Matt Green. What do I do between those two? Because I'll be at Tennessee, Ball State during these games, so I got to pick one to watch when I get back. Who do I pick?
I don't know. I think these are both going to be great games. So you're gonna have to record both of them. You got to go with your crew, right? These are your guys. You want to watch every game they do. So you got to go with the Fox
Yeah, I'm
Fox
going to go Penn
broadcast.
State. I'm more curious about Penn State. But we play Pitt next week, so it's like I kind of want to see what Pitt looks like for the tennis. There's a case for
Very
both.
good point. And the backyard brawl. I've
Yeah.
seen just some clips this week, and I love the energy from this rivalry.
It turns out rivalries are actually good in college football, Matt Green.
Yeah, so teams that are like geographically close to each other should play each other. It's a novel concept. But keeping it moving on our Friday game, outside of Rutgers, honestly, I wouldn't even necessarily rule out Rutgers. These could be the two worst teams in the Big Ten, I think, this year. Illinois at Indiana. Indiana is a 3.5-point favorite at home. Call me a prisoner of the moment. I liked how Illinois looked last week, moving the ball up and down the field against the Cowboys of Wyoming. And we got year 2 of Brett Bielema, and I'm just not – I have no idea what to expect from Indiana. I thought this is a program that kind of established itself, almost pulling a Kentucky, like in the Big Ten, of just years and years of just football ineptitude, and they seem to be turn the corner and be a solid program. Not sure what happened last year. So now I'm not sure about Indiana anymore. So I'm going to Illinois to go on the road and get the win. But, you could convince me either way. I'm not too high on either of these teams.
Are you a Tommy DeVito believer? Quarterback in Fighting Illini country?
He was efficient in week 1 versus Wyoming. And they were also running the ball. They ran the ball all over Wyoming. And this is Wyoming. But we know what Brett Bielema typically wants to do, and the teams he's had that have had success are always built on that offensive line and running the football.
Chase Brown looks like a star. I like him a lot. Some Bronco Mendenhall vibes there a little bit, or Bronco
Rashard
Mendenhall. The more recent Mendenhall Bronco. But speaking of running backs, though, true or false? Sean Shivers, old Auburn running back, will be featured in this game. Matt Green.
I believe it's Shivers, right?
Shivers, yes.
But yeah, I would say that's true.
He is
Connor Bazelak.
Yes, Connor Bazelak, Sean Shivers, and Josh Henderson from North Carolina will all be playing in this one for Indiana. Indiana was so bad at everything last year. Like, I really couldn't point to one thing Tom Allen's group did well. Like, the bottom really fell out in Hoosier country. And I don't want to be a prisoner of the moment. Like, it really concerns me that how much can you take away from a Wyoming team that looked pretty overmatched in that one? I don't think they broke 100 yards in that game against Illinois. Illinois' defense is really strong. They're going to be good. They have a really good DC in Ryan Walters, who I like a lot, who came from Mizzou. On the road, it's really tough to go into Bloomington on the road. People forget going into Hoosier territory with this new staff, new group, Bazelak and company. Friday night. Give me the Hoosiers to win and cover. I'm going to give Tom Allen this last chance here to right the ship, get started on the right note with Connor Bazelak and his new transfers. Give me the Hoosiers on Friday night to win and cover.
All right, Hoosiers, put it on the board. Wyoming did have 212 yards.
How many passing yards do they have?
They had 30 passing yards.
There it is, yeah.
Against Illinois in that one. So 3 out of 3 out of the gate disagreements. And then we got the Mac Brown Bowl in Boone, North Carolina, because these ACC teams inexplicably go on the road and to these group of 5 schools. I'll never understand it. But North Carolina going on the road at App State. App State is a 2-point home dog. And I got a stat for you because I feel like we have a common misconception about App State that there's some sort of giant killer, right? They beat Michigan and it was great. Since they beat Michigan, App State is 2-12 versus Power 5 schools, with both of those wins coming in 2019 with Eli Drinkowitz Do you have a guess for who those two teams were?
No.
One of them was South Carolina in Will Muschamp's final season, and the
Huh.
other one was in his first season at his current school. That was Mac Brown in North Carolina. So App State did beat the Tar Heels back in 2019, but I think North Carolina has improved as a program. Obviously took a huge step back in 2021, but I liked how Drake May looked. I think this Drake May Josh Downs connection could be a very like one of the better quarterback receiver connections in the ACC. He's one of the quarterbacks we really haven't talked about because there's so many established quarterbacks in the ACC. Like Drake May, I mean, this guy was a 5-star. He's a big time prospect. There's a chance that North Carolina's offense just doesn't miss a beat from Sam Howell. That Drake May's just as good. So I think 2 points. I just don't think App State's going to play with North Carolina. So I'm gonna take North Carolina in this one.
The line being 56.5 for total points scored scares me. That's what scares me. If they think it's going to be that high scoring, then I don't think that's the kind of game App State's going to win here with Sean Clark. If they win this game, I think it's low scoring. Their defense limits them. Chase Bryce, Grayson legend, Clemson legend, Chase Bryce back for his 13th collegiate season. It's insane to me that we're here where shout out to the Mountaineers for what they've done because they're favored in this one, Matt Green. Favored.
No, they're 2-point home dog.
I thought they were favored. Were they favored out of the gate by a point?
Unless the spread could have changed since this came out, but we're going off them being a 2-point home dog.
Okay, then it must have moved, or it depends on who you look at. Okay, we're going after a 2-point home dog. Here is what I'm going to say, Matt Graham. I don't like FAMU was down a bunch of players. They had like 8 scholarship linemen for that game against UNC. They still put up like 24 points in that one. The UNC defense, it turns out Gene Chizik is not the answer in 2022 for your team's defense. Turns out that is not going to solve your defensive woes in the Mac Brown era in Chapel Hill. I think the defense is still going to be pretty brutal in Chapel Hill. This is not an ACC contender. I think Drake May, like you said, looks good. The offense will be fine. I'm not worried about the offense. I think this defense is still going to be a train wreck. And if that's the case, if you were ever going to buy stock, I'm so conflicted, Matt Green, because on one hand, I think about NC State losing so many times on the road at East Carolina. And I think about the odds of the East Carolina Pirates and the App State Mountaineers both winning over the University of North Carolina and North Carolina State University in the same weekend. That's tough. That is wild. But it's also wild that both of these schools are going on the road to these rival smaller group of 5 North Carolina schools. I am damn sure one of these teams are pulling it off. I am damn sure it's App State or East Carolina get the win here. Like one of those two are getting one of these home wins. I am certain of that. I've gone back and forth all week who it's going to be though. And I cannot shake the feeling that NC State's too good. That NC State will be okay. And that they will find a way to win against an East Carolina team that I don't think is very good.
I was about to say, you better tread lightly talking about my Wolf Pack over here.
Ruffin McNeil, revenge game for the team that fired him, the East Carolina Pirates. He's on staff at NC State. Really good piece in ESPN.com about Ruffin, one of the game's greatest coaches. Just all around great dude. Lincoln Riley guy for a long time. But Lincoln Riley, not the current head coach of the East Carolina Pirates. So give me the Appalachian State Mountaineers to get this done. Give me the Mountaineers, Matt Green.
I think all of your critiques of North Carolina are valid. Like for 2.5 quarters versus FAMU, it was not looking very good. A team that was down 29 scholarship players. So they are a flawed team. I think they're still good enough to beat a team like App State. Like they're not going to compete in the ACC, like you said, but I like them this week. And we'll keep it moving. This is the one I'm bummed about being opposite Georgia, Oregon at the 3:30 spot on CBS or on Saturday. We have Cincinnati and Arkansas in Fayetteville. Arkansas is a 6-point home favorite. And I mean, this just comes down to one thing for me, pretty much. Like, other than just, I'm a big fan of Arkansas this year. Cincinnati just had 9 guys drafted. University of Cincinnati just had 9 guys drafted, 5 in the first 3 rounds. Like, this is just not the kind of program that recruits at that level that can just replace that level of talent. Like, just multiple first round picks, like that. It's just not, they just don't have that level of talent. So I think Cincinnati could still be the best team in the AAC this year. But I think Arkansas is going to take care of business. I think Arkansas is going to be, one of the better teams in the SEC West this year.
This is interesting. I think they are too. And I think a lot of people are talking themselves into Cincinnati again. And it's a close line. I wonder too, like, do you think Cincinnati would be favored if this was in Cincinnati?
I mean, usually people say what home's good for like 3 to 7 points or something like that. So with a 6-point spread, you could make that argument, but I still feel like Arkansas is just a better team. And it's like they go on the road in the SEC. Like, are they really worried about the home environment of Cincinnati? Like, is Cincinnati's home environment worth 7 points?
Does Cincinnati want to have that? Like, hey, they came. We shouldn't say close. They were never really in the Alabama game, but they kept it close. It was not a blowout. It was not embarrassing.
It was not an embarrassment. No, I would agree with that, especially with that Alabama's done to a lot of other teams.
You lose Desmond Ridder, you lose Kobe Bryant, you lose Sauce Gardner, but we'll see. Like, they haven't even named a quarterback yet, right? Like, that's still a secret battle. They haven't even put out a starter, if I'm not mistaken. They still haven't, correct, as of this recording?
Yeah, I believe so.
That's hard to pick. So I'm like, am I picking the Eastern Washington kid who started at Cincinnati and then left and then came back, or is it Prather, the mobile potential, who Mo Egger of ESPN 1500 up there in Cincinnati? I remember he was comparing him to, I think, Colin Kaepernick on my show with his skill set. So I mean, maybe, but it just seems like we're not quite there yet. So I think this year is going to be kind of a drop off, but I also think the fact that that line is that close, and I think Luke Fickell's a better head coach than Sam Pittman, I wonder if there is a little bit of an edge where Fickell does some stuff that you're like, man, that the talent wasn't that close, but like, he just outcoached Sam Pittman. That was what happened there. And I wonder if the talent's not that big of a disparity like Alabama, Cincinnati, but Arkansas, Cincinnati. But I can't do it. We're going to agree on our first game of the season, Matt Green. I don't think Arkansas is getting upended out of the gate here. So give me the Hogs to win and cover.
All right, lock it in. This next one, we got Houston going on the road at UTSA, and UTSA is a 4-point home dog. What are your thoughts about this one?
Matt Green, do you seem to recall how I felt about Houston in our preview series and what we were talking about this summer? What was I saying about Houston and Dana Holgerson's bunch?
I want to say you're picking them to go undefeated or something like that.
You are correct. This is an undefeated football team this year. Big Tony Delk guy, or not? What is it? Tony
Delk.
That's the point guard. What's his name? Delk. What is it?
I'm not sure.
Charles Delk, maybe. What is his name? Houston, DC. What is his name?
I was basing my logic more on Clayton Tune. I think Clayton Tune's the best quarterback
Doug
in the
Belk.
AAC.
Excuse me. Doug Belk.
Doug Belk. Okay.
There you go.
Not to be confused with Tony Delk.
The guard for the Charlotte Hornets.
The great sixth man for Charlotte Hornets. I was going to say, I don't know, Boston Celtics, like Orlando Magic. I feel like he played for half of the league.
He did. Going to be head coach soon. That's the sneaky thing about Houston is their defense was really good last year. And he's done a really good job with that unit. He could have left, could have moved on, and he probably could have gotten a head coaching job, and he did not. He's back. Dana Holgerson knows offense. Clayton Thune's back. They're not losing this one. I think right away they're winning. They're covering. Give me the Cougs, who I have going 12-0 this season.
UTSA was 105th in pass defense last season, and that's not a great sign when you're going up against probably the best quarterback in the AAC. So yeah, give me the Cougs. And then we got our last 3:30 game, Chick-fil-A kickoff. We got the 11th ranked Oregon Ducks and the 3rd ranked Georgia Bulldogs. Georgia's a 17.5 favorite in Mercedes-Benz Stadium. And I know that number seems high, but I look at this Georgia team. I think this Georgia, I mean, you're going to see a very similar offense than they had a year ago. And I think it just should be even more efficient than they were, with Stetson Bennett having an entire year as the starter, getting all of the offseason reps. He's a national champion. I imagine there's still all the naysayers around Stetson Bennett, but I imagine his confidence level has to be higher right now than it was 365 days ago. So I look at this Georgia defense, and like, Oregon's got a good defense, but I think Georgia's just got some of the best playmakers of any team in college football. Like, when you're including the tight ends along with the receiver group, like, this tight end group is just going to be absolutely insane. Like, if it's Brock Bowers, Eric Gilbert, Darnell Washington, I just think those guys are going to open things up for the receivers. And I just think Georgia's got too many weapons for Oregon to match up. Even though it is a very good defense, this feels like a 38-17 type of game to me. I feel like Georgia's just going to take care of business. Like, it could be close for a couple quarters, but I think Georgia's going to be too explosive offensively. And this defense is still going to be, like, this is still a Kirby Smart defense, right? Will Muschamp, Glenn Schumann. There's still a lot of continuity, even though they did lose Dan Lanning, the defensive coordinator. So I'm liking Georgia to cover the 17.5 point spread.
That's a lot. 17.5, like you laid out. It's not as crazy when you really break this down, but Bo Nix, huge wild card there on that front. We might see Bo Nix and Thompson in this one. We'll see. Oregon loses Dye to USC in the transfer portal. That being said, they might have the best linebacker combination in college football this year. Dan Lanning knows Georgia's offense very, very well. I am predicting, I don't think Oregon wins this football game. I do think Oregon covers. So I'm going to say Georgia wins, and I think Oregon covers. I think Oregon's defense is going to be a lot better than people are thinking, especially out of the gate here. And it might come down to Bo Nix not just putting the Oregon defense in just a really rough bind. Like, maybe that's where it comes down to for them, whether or not they cover. But my gut tells me that Oregon is going to play this close. Dan Lanning's going to play this safe, that there is an advantage of his first game being against somebody he knows very, very well in Kirby Smart. And it's not like he's taken over a program that was not had a dearth of talent. Remember, Oregon was the favorite going into the Pac-12 last year. Oregon was a team that people penciled in, kind of like how we're talking about Utah right now. That's how people were talking about Oregon last year with Mario Cristobal, that they were a playoff.
This is not a rebuild by any means.
No, and I think that's something to keep in mind. It's like Oregon can absolutely win the Pac-12 this year. They have the talent to win the Pac-12. I think people have gone a little too far in where Oregon is as a program right now. So give me the Ducks to put together a really great defensive performance in this one, but Georgia to ultimately win. But I will not be surprised if this is one of Stetson's worst games of the year and that Georgia fans are like, whoa, what happened here? I think Oregon's and Dan Lanning is going to cause some problems for him.
Yeah, I could see it. I would say more than worried about Stetson, I would worry the most about this offensive line for Oregon has 4 returning starters. If Bo Nix is not having to run for his life all day like he has the other 3 times he's played Georgia in his career, like, this guy is a talented quarterback. So I think if Oregon, and we obviously know everything Georgia lost defensively. So if Georgia's not able to, create a pass rush and Bo Nix actually has some time, something he's never had playing at Auburn for 3 years, I think that's where Oregon could be the most dangerous.
I like this stat from SI where they said Oregon was 5th nationally with 17 interceptions a year ago and was 6-0 in games where they won the turnover battle. And as we know, with Georgia and Dan Lanning's defense, they won the turnover battle a bunch, and this historic defense that he was the DC for, and he'll probably never get enough credit for what he did for that defense. I think Stetson's going to get picked off. Like, he's not a game manager, and Oregon is going to be aggressive with their coverage. I'm just most curious to see how Georgia lines up with their tight ends, how they use Eric Gilbert for the first time, how they get these guys involved, because they have so many, like you said, options at that front. They're thin at receiver, like thin in guys that are prove-it guys that you're comfortable with. No 1,000-yard guys in this room whatsoever, but there's talent, just a lot of unproven talent. And
But Georgia's never had a 1,000-yard guy, so that doesn't necessarily tell you everything, because they've had some very good receiving cores that have been 4 or 5 deep of guys getting 500 yards, right? And I think that's kind of what this seems like. I feel like they have like 5 or 6 like solid options at receiver. There's just not that guy. There's not that George Pickens that just is like that clear, established stud receiver on the outside. But they didn't have that last year either, really. So, I think while they do not necessarily have like the top end talent at receiver, they have a lot of good players. And I mean, Ladd McConkey and AD Mitchell were both freshmen last year, and as well as Brock Bowers. So you have like basically the 3 leading receivers coming back as far as receptions go. So there is a lot of continuity with the offense, and I think this offensive line is going to be better than it was a year ago. And I also think the running game could be better than it was a year ago. And I think Georgia's always going to have that identity of they're going to be balanced. They're not going to just air it out and trust Stetson to win the game. If they're going to want to be balanced and be able to run the ball as well.
We'll see too, just how the Oregon linebackers and safeties cover these tight ends. I think that might be the difference. Like if nobody can run with Eric Gilbert or Brock Bowers all night, it's over, and Georgia's going to cover. Like if there's no answer there, and these linebackers and safeties can't do it and can't handle themselves in man coverage with these mismatched machines with Georgia at those spots, then there's going to be a lot of attention. So I think McConkey and Mitchell and friends are going to have options in this game, because there's going to be so much attention as to what Gilbert and Washington and Bowers do. And we'll see how many 3 tight end sets we get with those guys.
We'll definitely see it at least once. You saw it last year when John Fitzpatrick was playing for Georgia. So these guys, with how talented they are. But yeah, that's the last thing I'll say is I don't really expect, I don't think it's necessarily reasonable to expect any linebackers or safeties to be able to match up with Brock Bowers or Eric Gilbert, because no one was really able to do it last year with Brock Bowers. And like Gilbert, it's obviously been a year since he's played football, but we know what this guy was supposed to be coming out of high school, and he had a productive year at LSU as a true freshman. So, they are absolute matchup nightmares. So it's hard to envision anyone being able to slow down Brock Bowers from what we saw him do in 2021 as a true freshman.
There we go. Where are we going next, Matt Green?
Keeping it moving. Another Pac-12 SEC matchup. We got the Utah Utes going down to the Swamp to play the Gators. And Florida is a 2.5-point home dog. Thought about going Florida with my home dog all off season. Like, I've been sold that Utah is going to win this game, right? I have just no second thought about it. Like Florida starting 0-1, and then I see the 2.5-point spread come out, and I'm like, I don't know, maybe Florida can do it. I just look at the types of teams that gave Florida problems last year, and it was these teams that were physical that could just run the ball on them. And I just feel like Utah's an explosive offense, man. Like they're going to run the ball. They're just a disciplined team. And I think Cam Rising makes them a more explosive, just a more dynamic offense. I just don't think Florida, I'm just not buying the Anthony Richardson stuff like everybody else either. Like I'm not super confident in Utah like I probably was like 6 months ago, but I just feel like these are 2 teams at 2 different levels of their program. And year 1 of Napier, I just don't think this is a good time to get a team that's as good and as experienced as Utah. So I'm going to take the Utes to go into the swamp and beat the Gators.
The last SEC game for the Utes, do you remember who it was against?
Shoot, it's not all the way back to like Saban and the Sugar Bowl or anything.
You are correct. It
That's the
was
last, like
Saban in the
08, 09 Sugar Bowl.
and they won that game. They've played the SEC 8 times total, Matt Green. That's their
Wow.
one SEC victory was in the Sugar Bowl against Alabama.
Wow. And that was a Whittingham coach team.
It was. I've gone back and forth on this one a bunch. Because like if Florida wins this one, they could start 2-0 very easily with Chris Rodriguez being suspended and Kentucky having to go to the swamp. And what a start to the Billy Napier era. If you're able to beat Kentucky and Utah out of the gate, Urban Bowl right away, and then beating Mark Stoops in week 2. But I've gone so back and forth on this, man, like you. Damian Parson of the Draft Network was on this program this week, and he's talking about Anthony Richardson as like the next Cam Newton, and that he's like a souped up version of Cam at Florida and has more he has more arm talent than Cam, but same size, same frame. And we've seen flashes. That scares me where he's the type of guy that NFL guys like, and like him being QB1 next year in the draft would not be surprising. If that happens, he's beating Utah here. Like if Anthony Richardson is real, and I would maybe argue that Anthony Richardson is more real than Will Levis, based on what we've seen. And if I had to bet on the two, I would probably bet on Richardson over Levis. The talent's there, Matt Green. It's at home, at the swamp. Everyone's already put in Utah. Like they're in the college football playoff. They're the trendiest college football playoff pick. I don't think Cam. You're right there. Not me.
I did it.
Not me. The Paul Rudd thing. Who would have thought? Not me. I'm going the Florida Gators to win outright. Give me the Gators right away. I think Florida's winning. Pains me to do it.
Florida was 73rd in total defense last year, 74th in scoring defense. I'm just not sure what makes us think the defense is going to be any better. Like Anthony Richardson could be an X factor that makes the offense more fun, more explosive. But like this team was flawed defensively, and I don't necessarily see them being better in 2022. So I think like you kind of alluded to a second ago, I think Florida winning this game, I think is up there with like worst case scenario for Tennessee fans. That I think what you're talking about is true with the suspensions going on with Kentucky. If they can start 1-0 and then start 2-0, like those, that's the positivity that would inject into the Florida program. I think that could make for a lot quicker rebuild than I feel like we're anticipating for Florida right now. It feels like they're a ways away, and it feels like Tennessee is that second contender kind of emerging in the SEC East. I think Florida starting 2-0 would really kind of ruffle some feathers there in Knoxville.
Well, I've got another crazy Florida stat for you. Ready from SI.com?
Hit me.
Florida owns the longest active season opening home win streak in FBS since 1990. 32 straight wins.
That's because they've played like nobody to open the season at home, like for 30 years, basically. They're known for not leaving the state of Florida, basically, at a conference. They're at least doing that at a couple, or is that next year when they play Utah?
It's a good question. I'm not sure. I don't know.
I think they have a home and home with like Colorado or Arizona State coming up too. They have a couple of them in the next few years.
I don't know. I'm gonna buy the Anthony Richardson Kool-Aid out of the gate. I think it's probably real, and the stuff we saw in the spring game and just what they're gonna be able to do on the ground, I think they're gonna do it. It pains me.
The only thing I'll say is I'm not gonna. Oh man, I think it's Connor O'Hara.
Yeah.
Saturday Down South. I don't want to steal his. Don't want to steal his line, but I've basically thought it for myself. we need to stop the Cam Newton comparisons with every quarterback that's 6'5", 240, that's an athlete. Like Cam Newton was just absurd, and we're not going to see that many Cam Newtons. But Anthony Richardson was this athlete last year, right? And the year before, and he was still not able to beat out Emory Jones. And I think Emory Jones was not a good college quarterback. So I think that's one reason among many, and just his decision making when he's playing. Like, we know what kind of athlete he is, but we've yet to really see it. Like, I'm sorry, but rushing for 150 yards on South Florida doesn't convince me that you're going to be a good SEC quarterback. Like, he could be. We see the potential, but I'm still not buying the Anthony Richardson hype.
Cam rising in Florida, more like Cam falling. Where are we going next, Matt Green?
Great segue. Next, we got Boise State at Oregon State, and the Beavers are a 3-point home favorite. What are your thoughts on this one?
Jonathan Smith getting some love against Boise out of the gate. This is going to be a fun one, Matt Green. This is the kind of game that you stay up for, that I live for, man. This is where, look, Matt Green, this is the stuff you tell your children about. The night that Jonathan Smith's offense and those offensive Beavs that are going to have one of the best offenses in the country once again against that Andy Avalos Boise State defense. Just the greatness on one side versus the greatness on the other. That is what I stay up for on Saturday nights, Matt Green. That is what I'm looking for. Give me the Beavs to fight out of the gate under Jonathan Smith, the most underrated FBS coach in the country right now, Matt Green. Beavs offense is legit. They're going to beat a couple teams. Their defense still stinks, but that will not come into play against a Boise team that I'm not sure if Andy Avalos is the long-term guy, another former Boise player, but I don't know. I'm just a little shaky to this point for Boise. So this is not the Boise we grew up with. Jared Dobransky's not walking through that door, my friend. Give me the Beavs here to win and cover.
Well said. Yeah, I think Oregon State I think they could be one of the top half teams in the Pac-12 this year. And like you said, this isn't our Boise State of the 2000s. So I'm going to say Oregon State as well. And then our last one is on Monday night. We got Florida State in a neutral site in what is this called? Is it the Caesars Superdome now? I think that's what it's in New Orleans. I think it's called the Caesars Superdome. Because why would we want to play this game in Death Valley? That's not good.
I thought it was Mercedes. Football. Didn't they have Mercedes too? I thought they were both Mercedes.
It was Mercedes Superdome for years, but I'm pretty sure you can look that up for me if you want. But I think it's the Caesars Superdome now.
I believe you.
Because we don't want to. There's no point in playing college football games in Death Valley. That's never worked for anybody. So right. Florida State and LSU. LSU is a 3-point home favorite, and I just look at this offensive line. Like, we've seen basically since DeAndre Francois' career went downhill. Like, this Florida State offensive line has just been awful for years. And while this is a new rebuild for LSU, it's like it was a rebuild because Ed Orgeron it's a new head coach because Ed Orgeron just wasn't getting the job done. We know LSU has dudes. This defensive line is just loaded with talent. And I just don't think that Florida State's going to be able to block them, honestly. Like, I don't know what to expect from Jaden Daniels. And I'm not super high on LSU coming into this year. But at 3 points, it's basically a pick 'em. And I don't think Florida State's on LSU's level. So I'm going to take LSU to win this one.
This is the biggest game of the Mike Norvell tenure. If you want to get LSU early, like, this is basically a home game for LSU. I think this building is going to be primarily LSU. I mean, FSU travels well, but it's just, you're right there in New Orleans. It's basically a home game for similar to the Georgia Bulldogs versus Oregon.
Exactly. They at least don't have quite as far to travel from Tallahassee, but
right. Jordan Travis looked good against Duquesne last weekend. I'm pretty high on Jordan Travis and what he can do for this group. Be nice to have Travis Hunter against Butte in this one. That would be a nice matchup to have if you're the Noles. What are we supposed to do with these quarterback battles? Where like we're going into this game on Sunday night, and we don't know if it's Garrett Nussmeier or Jaden Daniels. Like, are we like
I
how?
tend to think it's Daniels, right?
I mean,
You
if
know,
okay, I think so
what do you think?
too, but I don't know. I'm
No,
not
we
in the
don't
room. Like
know.
I have no. I don't have any. I don't have any sources in what's going on behind the scenes in Baton Rouge. That like it's hard for me to forecast. The only thing I know for certain is Butte might be the best receiver in college football this year. Like he might just put up the best stats, and that's going to go a long way. This is an entirely new staff, and they're starting out of the gate here with a Mike Norvell coach team. They've already played one game. They pretty much know who they are as a program at this point, going into year 3 with Norvell. I want to pick Florida State here, where it's like this game matters so much more to the Noles than the Tigers in this one, because Tigers, like, who cares? Saban lost to the Warhawks in year 1. Like this is who cares? Like LSU fans will look past a Florida State loss out of the game. Florida State fans are like, look, man, you got to show us something for us not to be wearing Tank for Dion t-shirts in Doak in the Doak in week 4. I am. Here's my upset of the week, Matt Green, of our pick'em. I'm going to go the Noles here. I am going to say Florida State beats LSU out of the gate here. Give me the Noles. I am doing this for my cousin, doing this for the family. This is it. You've got your shot here, Mike Norvell. Prove something that there is an opportunity. Like you can do this. Who won the DeAndre Francois Ole Miss Florida State opener, by the way? Was that FSU? That was FSU, right? Didn't they win?
Yeah, because that was an Ole Miss open the season blowing like multiple 3 touchdown leads, I think. And like I think they did it like twice, like their first 3 games. Because I just remember that because that was Kirby's first year. And I remember my mom actually making a very savvy joke saying, well, at this rate, Georgia's got them right where they want them. They're up like 21-0 or something. And it was funny. But I think Ole Miss beat Georgia like 45, like 16 or something. They beat the hell out of them
Is
that
that a
year
Swag Kelly year?
at Ole Miss. That could be 2016. That might be last year of Chad Kelly. Yeah, Jacob Eason. Georgia didn't put up much of a fight in that one, but yeah. So, but not to derail your point about FSU. I'm not sure
That's
where
it.
you were
That's all I
going with
got
that.
for the Florida State Seminoles. This is their Super Bowl, man. Like this is it. This is a big win, big test, national audience. You're on your own, Norvell. Like it's do or die time, man. Like if this working, like this is it. Like if you're not trending in the right direction, 7-5, getting some kind of signature win because they have exactly 0 signature wins. Couldn't even beat Florida with Florida not having a coach and just being completely lifeless down the stretch last year.
While I like where your head's at, who would you say the Ireland game was more important to, Northwestern or Nebraska?
Oh, Nebraska, no question. Pat Fitzgerald has a job there for as long as he wants. Like
I would say it was much more important to Nebraska. They had a coach fighting for their life, and didn't matter on the score line. So
right.
as important as it is for Florida State, I just think LSU has better players, and I don't know. I just think this is the beginning of the end for the Norvell era.
We'll see.
I don't think it takes a lot too for him to keep his job. I think some solid progress just in the right direction. I think he could keep his job. So a win in the opener over LSU, I think, could go a long way. And just the optics of it, right? Like it doesn't matter if this LSU team goes 6-6, 7-5 this year. Like we beat LSU in New Orleans. Like that's a massive win.
I agree. Matt Green, we did it. We're back. Week 1 preview.
Man. I'm jacked, as Dan Quinn would say. We finally got college football back, man.
We do. let's also run down a couple other ones real quick, and you can stop me if you have any takes. Central Michigan on the road at Oklahoma State. Jim McElwain going to Stillwater on that one on Thursday night as well. We've got Michigan hosting Colorado State, and Jay Norvell, my old friend from Nevada, for his first game as a Ram. We got that one. We've got the beginning of the UCLA or the USC Lincoln Riley era against Rice, where they're a 32.5-point favorite against the Rice Owls. Goodness gracious. Gary Bohannon makes his debut for the South Florida Bulls, hosting BYU and BYU's World Tour with their schedule. We've got, I think, Clemson, obviously, on the road at the Benz against Georgia Tech, where
I don't know who came up with that. This whole Mercedes-Benz agreement they had a few years ago of playing like one home game annually at Mercedes-Benz. Like, that's a terrible mistake. Like, they're just going to be outnumbered every single time. Like, this place, I think they're even the top level of Mercedes-Benz is going to be curtained off.
Oh, no.
Like, which is done very classy, I will say, at Mercedes-Benz. Like, I went to an Atlanta United game where they were curtained off, and I honestly didn't even notice till like halfway through the game. But yeah, I guess that's Georgia Tech's request that I think it's like an 80,000 capacity, 75,000 capacity. So what is that? 50,000 people are going to get in if you curtain off that top section. So I don't know. Regardless of how many people are in there, I have a good feeling it's going to be about 80% Clemson fans.
I would agree. It's also been beaten out of him. Like, what Tech fans want to go?
I mean, are there more Georgia Tech fans in Atlanta than Clemson fans? Like, I'm honestly not sure.
It's a good point.
Or at least Metro Atlanta. I feel like I see a lot of Clemson fans.
What was the last close Clemson Tech game? Was that like the Woody Dantzler Clemson
last
era?
year was close.
I guess last year.
I think last year was like what, 14-6 or something.
That's
like
true.
I just completely. That's game.
True. What if this is close, man? What if this is must-see television? Like DJ can you imagine? I mean, Georgia Tech pulling this off on Monday night would just be, oh my goodness, what a capper to week 1 of the college football season if Tech and Jeff Collins are able to pull that out of their hat. That would be. I mean, I don't think it's going to happen, but goodness gracious, I forgot that this was 14-6 last year.
That would definitely be the upset of the weekend for sure. I think. Speaking of dead men walking, like, I think Jeff Collins, like, some of these guys had some hope that the 2022 season could be what gets them going in the right direction. It was 14-8 last year.
Okay.
But yeah, like Georgia Tech, there's nothing to really be excited about. There's nothing that I see no signs. The one sign they had is playing running back for Alabama now. So that's pretty much all they had. So there's no real reasons for optimism for Georgia Tech.
There you go. We end on this front, Matt. I will be in the building tomorrow night for Neyland, for Tennessee Ball State. Tennessee's a 33-point favorite, I think, against the Cardinals.
I thought I just saw 35.5.
There you go. Even more than that. Yeah.
Are they going to cover?
I think they'll cover.
That Heupel offense, man.
It might be 35-0 at the end of the first quarter. You know all too well as a Georgia fan what it's like to be down after the first quarter to the hype balls. You know that feeling all too well.
Wow.
It's gonna be fun.
I don't even know what to say. I'll let you have it. That 10-7. Was it 10-7? Was that the first quarter score? Georgia, Tennessee last year?
It does sound
something
right.
Like that.
Because it was 17 total, and I had the banner somewhere in this office. Scored 17 on the University of Georgia last year. No, it's gonna be a blast. I'm just so glad it's back in my life. So excited to be back in Neyland.
Quality to play a cupcake like that on a Thursday. I feel like that's quality. It doesn't have to distract you from the full slate on Saturday, because that's when it's always the worst. It's like when your team's playing a bad team at 7:00. It's like, well, I gotta watch my team, even if there is the college game day game of the week or whatever.
Yeah, 100%. But yeah, no, it'll be fun. It's all digital now though. Tickets, which is going to be a mess. The amount of boomers and older folks doing the digital ticket only stuff at the gate. Oh my goodness, Matt Green. I don't know what I'm very, very dubious as to how this goes with this fan base this fall, because there's no paper tickets whatsoever.
They may be boomers, but when it comes to college football, they'll figure out what they need to do to get in the door. All right, they don't get it twisted. That place will be packed on time.
There you go. Matt Green, always a pleasure, my friend. We can find you on Twitter at Matt_W_Green. Follow him there on twitter.com for all of his great CFB takes. And as always, check us out on YouTube, youtube.com/ChaseThomasPodcast. Like and subscribe, all that good stuff. Email us for any college football questions or anything you have for Matt or myself at chasethomaspodcast@gmail.com. And all that good stuff. There you go, Matt Green, college football back this weekend, my friend.
Yes, sir. Let's do it.